Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of All Things Change. I'm Liz, the founder of The Good Space, and I'm joined by Paula.
Hello again. It's great this. I'm Paula Carter. I'm the founder and director of Initio Success.
And in this episode, we're going to explore what leaders often overlook when we talk about emotional labor of change and when we explore the emotional labor of change, how teams can stay aligned when the pressure is on, and the behaviors that can quietly determine whether change succeeds or fails. So, Paula, what do you wish leaders understood about the emotional labor of change?
Yeah. It's very fundamental that we are aware and conscious of this because it's real, it's
Yes.
heavy, and it's unevenly distributed because it does differ from teams, from people.
Yeah.
Some people can carry more emotional weight because of their roles or
Mm,
their personal circumstances or their neurotype. And I think when
mm,
leaders, it is a responsibility for them not only to recognise that emotional work, the labour of work, and support it with a time and empathy and realistic expectations, but I think what's also equally important is that they do this for themselves as well.
yes.
Really do, because often when people are or leaders are leading change, it's with their own workload as well.
Yes.
So there's a balance not only for the teams that they're leading, but for themselves as well. And that's a huge responsibility that I think is equally just as important.
That's a really good point. You're right, because sometimes the manager delivering some of the change or communicating the change will also be experiencing the change themselves. So
Yes.
you've got that at play too. And I think when that's at play, particularly if you are neurodivergent, um,
Mm.
overreaction can sometimes or perceived overreaction is often overwhelm. So instead of reacting to that overreaction, spending a little bit of time being curious about that reaction and understanding that it isn't personal. When someone reacts emotionally
Yeah,
to change, it
that's
is
true.
never personal. It
Yeah.
is in the moment reaction. They need a bit of time and space to
Mm.
process, and giving them that time, and then approaching them to have a one-to-one conversation where again we're not on the defensive, we're just being really curious about that response and what's going on for them. I think things like that can be really powerful and can sometimes take people that have a real aversion to change to bringing them on board when they feel heard, they feel validated. That can make quite a bit a difference, can't it, Paula?
Totally. And I think also what can be difficult is when you're leading change but may not agree with it.
Yes.
So, and I've experienced that. I've seen it firsthand, and I admire people that can lead change with conviction, but not necessarily agree with it. And I think
Mm,
the way my advice is to not to try, because we're all humans,
mm,
to avoid the bias,
yes. Yeah.
but to balance that with the humility part, the human aspect of, the empathy, not the sympathy,
Yeah.
because there's
Yeah.
a vast difference between sympathy and empathy.
Mm,
Is to empathize with the people and actually say, well, I concur, I do understand how you
mm,
feel, but this is what I've done to help me work through this change.
mm,
And that is a responsibility of a leader, to
yeah.
be able to address that first before leading the people through the change as well.
Yes, and managing your own regulation, emotional regulation
Yes,
before you communicate with others, because
totally.
again, even though you might be communicating that's something that's scripted, your tone of voice and your body language plays
Yes,
a big part in that communication too. So,
yeah.
how, Paula, based on your experience, do you help leadership teams stay aligned when the pressure of delivery starts to pull them in different directions?
Um, I've often said that moving into change management was like a feeling of coming home, because creating clarity from ambiguity,
Mm,
because the way I process things, I've got to be kind of systematic. I've got to have some clarity. I've got to understand what the purpose is.
yeah.
And I think bringing that so it's relative, that people can relate to it. So it's got to be a shared purpose. It's got to be a shared language. So what I tend to do is understand and appreciate the people that you're working with. Because every
Mm,
organisation and every business is different, and it's never one size fits all. So
mm,
I can, I do deliver change programs and learning, but what I do is tailor that to the organisation so that it
mm,
fits with what their needs are. So alignment is really fundamental, and it isn't a one-off conversation.
yeah,
It's a discipline. And I
yeah.
think that's, and I've used that in other podcasts about words being disciplines, not just one-offs. And I
Mm,
think it's important to create spaces where leaders can also surface tensions. They
mm,
often say counsellors go to a counsellor to kind of help and support them to process what they've been receiving from the person they're counselling. Well, equally, I think that's important for leaders to have a safe
mm,
place where they're not judged, they're not measured on this,
mm,
but they need to be able to have a reset, they need to recalibrate, they
yeah,
need to reassess that the expectations are still the same. Because we all know from an agile perspective, if we're taking that the sense of the direction can need to be changed, and
mm,
the frustration from leaders when they're leading change and not really knowing that that has changed, the outcome or the goal has changed slightly. It's understanding that, making sure the leaders are aligned, and understanding then how the organisation feels steadier to then adequately be able to lead the change and confidently.
yes, yes, I love that. And I also think most people, the good majority of people that are working wants to do a good job. So I
Mm.
think going into a change program and thinking the best of people, so
Mm.
even if difficult questions are asked,
Mm.
giving that person grace and understanding that that's their way of processing and they need to ask that question to help them move to the next stage. Most people aren't asking questions to be difficult, are they? They're
No,
doing
not at
it to help
all.
process and understand.
Absolutely. And I think there is a responsibility. It's a really good point you said that, but there's a responsibility as well of how that's received.
Yes.
And often our face can say something completely different to what is coming out of our mouth. So
Yeah.
it's being mindful of that, our body language, our tone, how we receive that. Because if we don't receive that in a positive way,
Mm.
then, they always say feedback's a gift, and it's not what's said, it's how it's said. What
Mm.
we don't want to do is literally cut that from somebody, because it could have taken somebody a while to find the confidence to speak
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
and ultimately that could then put them back away, shut it away, and they'll never be vocal again and never feel confident to
Mm.
do it. So in terms of behaviours, Liz, from
Mm.
leaders, what do you think is the biggest difference to whether a change succeeds or fails from a leader perspective level?
Mm. I think the biggest difference is human. Like we've explored so much of this as human, isn't it? So
Yes.
clarity, providing clarity when clarity is needed, consistency,
Oh, yes.
so important, and emotional steadiness because people are going to be experiencing lots of different emotions. So really, as a leader, I think it's your responsibility to be regulated when you're having those conversations. So you're in a good place when someone asks a difficult question and you're not kind of
Mm.
reacting to their emotion as well. So I think really important to give yourself the space that you need to be regulated. I think leaders also they need to explain the why. We said about repeating the messages, and also they need to be visible throughout the program, not just at launch. I think visibility helps to build trust as well, and helps to build those that kind of the trust in the change, the trust in the leadership as well, delivering it. And I think it's okay to not have all the answers as well. So a leader being okay saying, gosh, that's a really brilliant question. We haven't actually got to that part of the program where we understand and can answer that, but great question. Let's capture it. And I promise I will come back to you. And this is where we have to again make sure that we're delivering on our intent and action. We'll come back with an answer to that question and be really specific on the time frame there. I think
No.
what kind of can derail change. It's confusion, it's mixed signals, isn't it? It's defensiveness when challenged, or the perceived threat of being challenged. When open curiosity just keeps things more neutral. I think having like that neutral mindset can really help. And when it comes to neurodiverse teams, predictability and transparency really help to reduce any unnecessary threats that they might be feeling or experiencing. Is there anything you would add, Paula?
I agree with that, because then that could be a trigger for the person that's leading as well.
Yes.
And I think it's being self-aware. I think what's important as a leader is
Yes.
self-awareness, because we all have different leadership styles. The way that
Mm,
we lead our teams, the way that we manage the teams, whether you use the word manage or lead is
mm,
debatable, and when you bring that in. But I think self-awareness of who you are as an individual, what your leadership style is, and how can this be used to the best, with the potential that you have as a leader to help
mm,
deliver the change. And help, something we mentioned earlier about assumptions when you're delivering change, if there
mm.
are gaps, is be aware of that, because those, they can snowball, can't they?
They can.
So I think that's also important as a leader. But I think bringing this to a conclusion, because I think this is ultimately a very fundamental part of the change, isn't it? Because leadership effectively can play a significant part on defining the culture of an organisation,
Yeah.
and how experiences change, the emotional labour is involved,
Mm.
and we've said how heavy that can be. But it's okay to reach out to the people that you're leading as well, to say, "Do you know what, we can help and support each other." Because often people look up to the leaders for all the answers,
Mm,
but they don't necessarily have them, as you rightly
mm.
said. But it's creating that environment that encourages people to feel collaborative. And I think some people absorb more of the strain because of their role or
Yes.
their neurotype, of personal experiences or circumstances.
Yeah.
But it's acknowledgement. I think it's acknowledging this, and we said it in our other podcast, is look out for your peers as well.
Mm,
Look out and establish how you can support them. Finding the right space to decompress. Alignment's really important. I think that creates a stabilizing force, as we've said, and returning to what is the shared purpose, the shared
yeah.
language, the shared priorities helps leadership teams to stay steady. And I think when they're delivering, pressures can build up. It's trying to make sure that you're aware of that,
Yeah.
and an avoidance is really important. So, and I think really when leaders show up, as you've said, we can create that steadfastness, we can create steadiness, and people feel safe and trust deepens. And what's most important with all of these messages that we're putting here is, again, it's not just creating the environment for one change, it's creating a culture for continual learning, a
Yeah.
safe place to help deliver future changes.
Mm.
Um, but any of you, if you would like to discuss anything further on this, on or this podcast or any of the others, please reach out to Liz, or myself on LinkedIn. But Liz, I'm really enjoying these, because we've said there's a joined energy there. There's an alignment
Mm.
there of our energies, and what you're bringing really, really is important to the delivery of change, of the recognizing the difference that we are all as individuals and the uniqueness that we have. And it's about how we
Mm.
embrace that and help to
Mm.
deliver successful change.
Mm.
So anything you'd like to add to that conclusion?
Just really enjoying these conversations, like you said, Paula. You've clearly got a ton of experience delivering loads of change, so it's great to hear. Um, I guess hear not only the theoretical side of things, because we can all create wonderful plans, can't we? But often
Yeah.
plans become derailed, things happen, things either don't happen to plan, or timescales get moved, and this is the messy part sometimes of change.
Mm.
Sometimes things aren't neat, are they? So actually
No.
having the experience and well, I guess the life experience to draw upon can really help.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Liz. And thank you everyone for joining us. Until
Thanks,
next time.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.